enjoy these meetings out in the community, and it's yeah, it's nice and warm in here too, given the temperature outside, and also just thinking about our farmers at the moment that have been going through some pretty tough conditions over the last 3 weeks with lambing and calving. So I'll move on to the agenda. The toilets are just through there, men's to the left, ladies to the right. If we need to get out, follow Dean. Emergency exits are just over there and over there with the green signs. This meeting is being recorded for both live streaming and downloading later on. So by remaining in this meeting, you're consenting to being recorded. And if we can just please have our cell phones on silent, although I don't think there's much reception in here, so I think that's already taken care of. We've got an apology from Councillor Fraser. Do we have any further apologies? And potentially Councillor Wilson, but I think he's online by the looks of it. There's no further apologies. Does someone like to move Councillor Fraser's? Thank you, Christine. Seconded by Margie. All those in favour, please say aye. Anyone against? It's carried. Do we have any leave of absence coming up from anyone? There being none. Are there any items on the agenda that anyone has a conflict of interest today? There being none. We don't have any extraordinary or urgent items. So the minutes from our last council meeting on the 26th of August on page 6 of your agenda. Someone like to move that they are true and correct? Thank you, Margie. Seconded by Councillor Boak-Roy. All those in favour, please say aye. Anyone against? That's carried. I don't believe we've got any public participation. So that takes us to our first report, which is the Colac Bay Community Update. So welcome, we've got some members of the community at the head of the table there, and I think Dean Mackay is going to kick off. Cool. Can everyone hear all right over there? You're right. And this is on page 105 of your agenda. I'll hand over to you, Dean.
Welcome everybody, and good morning. My name is Dean Mackay and I'm currently Chairperson of the Colac Bay and District Progress League. Welcome to this great community hall, Colac Bay's heart, built in parts by the locals with locally sourced lumber to house the volunteer corps for drill and construction. The drill hall opened in 1901 and from there working bees continued to maintain and upgrade this hall, the latest being a new kitchen fit out. But now with council restrictions to prevent the same involvement, we still aim to contribute where we can. Sometime later, the hall was renamed to the current Rifles Hall. The name Colac was derived from the Maori chief Porako, which early whalers mispronounced as Colac. Maori were the first settlers, the Colac situated between the Full School and Bundaia Hill. The bay's natural wide sweep and beach, riches of fishing, shellfish gathering, grasslands, inland lakes and rivers, Tihakas, Argillite rock all made this area an ideal place for settlement. Whaling and mutton birding also become excellent work and food sources. The beach used to boat families of Titi Island owners out to the awaiting vessels. At one time, the mutton bird season was of such significance it forced the closing of the school for the season. Mutton birds were often referred to as Colac currency. Gold in the bush brought European and Chinese immigrants to the area looking for wealth. The Chinese settled at Round Hill and Canton Town was born. Those people were hardworking, extraordinary engineers of their time. Canton also became notorious for a lot of other social reasons. What sets Colac Bay apart from other small townships? Tihaka sand boasts a special gripping quality, which was sold nationwide to the railway for the steam train tracks, and also as its hard green argillite rock, once used by Maori for tool making and now in roading. In 1901, a cable was installed from Centre Island to Hanatui Point, just beyond the boat ramp, to improve communications from rowboat for Centre Island's lighthouse keeper and family. We also boast two heroes, George Tasman Dawson, who in 1913 received the Royal Humane Society Steed Gold Medal for heroism and saving his fellow bushmen's lives. In 1941, Sergeant John D. Hinton received the Victoria Cross for gallantry and leadership in Greece during the Second World War. This was personally recommended by King George VI. Now, about us. The Colac Bay Progressive League was first formed in the 1920s, at all times seeking to improve amenities. This quote is from the Colac Bay book. Petitions and deputations were all supported by residents, even if results often proved disappointing. So here we are still advocating for what we feel Colac Bay needs. 1954 saw this group evolve into the District Progress League and become incorporated in 1989. Present day, we are a committee of 18 strong, each bringing their own diversity to the table, at the same time holding the same values as our predecessors, to protect, preserve and progress. At times this requires advocating to council to ensure we're being heard, but it's the people that makes this community. And we assist where we can. We are of limited means, but no real significant reserves of significant note. With fundraising, whether it be selling raffle tickets or a function at the junction, which is here, either in the form of a ball or a wiggle and giggle. Mostly a biennial event which creates opportunity for wider involvement. Our aim isn't to create a business, but we're about getting the business done. That due to state of abandonment, we became custodians of the boat ramp, providing a community asset for both locals and the wider fishing community. Projects in the pipeline are the refurbishment of one of our bus shelters and a points of interest sign visitors. Historical site boards are in the to-do stage. We strive for transparency with open meetings, regular committee updates, blurbs in the Western Star paper and social media posts. Currently, our four main priorities are the rock revetment wall, foreshore rock revetment wall, recognition for maintenance, rebuild and berm nourishment. Blanket spraying needs to stop, which we have video footage to support what's happening, and erosion protection grasslands planted for the foreshore rock revetment wall. This has been stated in both the NIWA and council papers, and to date has only been addressed once in 11 years. Is this good enough for a council-owned asset that services approximately 75 properties, including homes, two maraes, community cemetery, businesses, and council properties? Mayor Scott, you have advocated for more community involvement. This community has offered time, expertise, and product, but still council complexities have prevented these offers gaining traction. Recognition on the risk of sea incursion and assessment on that historic dump. Dump needs to be recognised as high risk. Approximately 5 years ago, a former councillor and a current local, from her own research, assessed the rate of erosion at the site being a metre per 18 months. We've got 3 metres left of hard fill. That would give council 2 to 3 years to protect this line of existing roading to protect the dump from sea incursion. I believe this rate of erosion has accelerated in this time, and council has 2 years to secure the dump. This would give you time for sediment testing, which would provide data on what contaminants still exist, but an unknown is what these contaminants would transpire to once exposed to the environment, i.e. at present they are dormant and in an anaerobic state. The hard fill, as ascertained by the water runoff testing, proves it's invaluable as a ground filter. A defence to stop contaminants washing into, and is also a defence to stop contaminants washing into the marine environment. Sea incursion would put all 3 stakeholders at risk of an environmental disaster, open themselves to legal action due to failing their statutory duties. So what is the greater risk here? 1, the likelihood of it happening, or to the severity of it happening. What will the financial and public cost of making the wrong risk decision be? The beach access steps is another high priority for us. Still not in place. Where are they? Number 4, the surf statue. This has become what it was initially designed to do, become an icon for not only Colac Bay but also Southland, and has grown to be a hot surfer spot. And now with one physical statement links Colac Bay worldwide. A great nod to both local and the world surfing community. We have formed a subcommittee to create a plan to liaise with council on the best way forward to retain this structure, which has become synonymous with Colac Bay. Mayor Scott, we thank you for standing true to your word, firstly by attending our February 2003 general meeting, followed by a walking talk following May, and now here we are with full council. We cannot change the past, but we can craft and mould the future. It has been 11 years of emails, meetings, advice, seeking to be heard. The community has been very tolerant to date, and now it is our hope to hear council's plans for Colac Bay, when and how these plans are to be actioned. In closing, I would like to present Gemma McGrath, who is speaking on the dump, Lana Winders speaking on the surf statue, and to my left, Peter McLean, who's going to speak further on the rock revetment wall. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. And just a comment from my part before you hand over to Gemma. You talked about the 18 members of that Progress League and the passion that you've all got, and that was evident at that meeting that I attended. And it's a great wee community here, and I think it defines what all our small communities in Southland are made up of. So thank you for the work that you do and the passion that you've got.
Kia ora koutou. Good morning, everyone. My name is Gemma McGrath. Apologies for if you've heard a little bit of this before, but I'm just going to go over a few things. Just a really warm welcome to Colac Bay to you all. It's just a really honour. It's a big honour for us as a community to have council here. So thank you very much. I just live around the corner and down the road, so it was really easy for me to come today, so thank you. So I'm your local marine biologist. I monitor Hector's dolphins. I also am monitoring the erosion at the site. I've been here since 2018. And I've got a master's in science communication, and I've worked for numerous NGOs over the last 20 years for conservation of Hector and Maui dolphins. So this place, Colac Bay, is very special. We have local Hector's dolphins that live here. It's also significant because it's the first place around mainland New Zealand where a southern right whale came to give birth. This is a big deal because it hasn't happened to our knowledge since 1840. So Colac Bay is very special for marine mammals. And we get orca, bottlenose, and other whale species visiting here too. So I've been collecting data for the last 6 years now, and it shows for sure that the area of the dump is definitely a core part of the local dolphins' use. And they are there very often and foraging, raising their calves, resting, socialising. It's a great little spot for them there. Very low in abundance. They're still recovering from fishing. It's a very precious local subpopulation. There's only a few of them, maybe 2 or 3, sometimes there's more. So a little bit about the dump, for those of you that don't know. Prior to this dump site being under Southland District Council management, there was a much wider area that was being used by the community in Southland for dumping. And this was under the Wallace County Council from the early 1960s on. We have multiple affidavits from locals here during that time who personally witnessed a huge amount, significant amounts of chemicals, sprays, batteries, oil, whiteware, drums, cars, plastics dumped there, including the now banned DDT and 2,4,5-T, which is used to make Agent Orange, a very dangerous neurotoxin that we do not want anywhere near life. These chemicals are a hazardous mix of synthetic pesticides, herbicides, dioxins, and PCBs, and when they get together, they do even worse stuff. Synergy is not good. DDT has a half-life of 150 years in the marine environment, so we're talking hundreds of years for this stuff to go. So it's unknown how much or how deep these holes were. It's unknown the extent of toxins, the amount. We haven't done any sediment testing to know yet. So we don't really know what we're dealing with. It's really, really awesome that some monitoring has taken place over the last few years. Bores have been established on top of the gravel boundary and they're monitoring the groundwater. And the results show that the site is not considered hazardous from this groundwater testing and it has been assessed as low risk. However, we do know that the water quality coming out is impacted. It does exceed the permitted activity conditions. Leachate from the closed landfill is present at the site boundary. So it's confirmed that there is toxins there. It also confirms that the gravel buffer, which is only 3 meters and getting smaller every month, is doing a great job at natural filtration. We also have something fantastic happening in this situation, and that is the wetland. The wetland's doing a great job of slowly resolving these toxins over time. It's wetlands are some of the most ecologically important communities on the planet. They're like the kidneys, and they naturally detox what's in the sediment over time. So it's doing a great job as it is. Nature's amazing. However, all of this dump site is assessed as low risk. This is based on the assumption that it is not going to be disturbed by the sea. Once this site gets disturbed by the sea, it's pretty much not game over, but it might be for Colac Bay, potentially. So we strongly believe that the erosion designation of low risk is incorrect. It was based on a desktop assessment in 2020, not even a site visit. So it was already outdated data from the get-go. Now, I've been in discussion with the E3 scientists about my observations of the erosion. I believe it's accelerated erosion. And they also believe that the site is vulnerable to erosion and has reached a trigger point and needs repair. They also said that if the toxins present within the site were exposed to erosion, it would be a disaster regardless of the amount of toxins in there. Now, we also have information from an independent expert, and anyone who understands how toxins and wetlands work will understand that these toxins are not getting exposed to oxygen, so they are in a dormant anaerobic state. That's why the wetlands are able to do such a good job slowly of detoxifying it. So basically the breakdown slowed down and prevented, and it's not going to show up in the groundwater. So the groundwater testing is ineffective, really. It's not really informing us what we're dealing with. It's not informing us what's in the sediment and all the toxins that could be there, are there, according to the affidavits. So the wetland is like a sitting duck. Unfortunately, there's predicted water level rise, increase in storm surges, and if there's a big storm event, that 3 metre boundary could get breached anytime for a big significant event. So we might not have 2 years or 3 years. If there is a big event, then it could happen before that. So what would happen if the wetland is opened out to sea? It would start slowly first, but every tidal cycle, the ocean would come in and eat away some of that sediment that's underneath the wetland. potentially releasing these toxins into the bay. So first of all, trees would be considered contaminated. People wouldn't be able to surf them. Then the rest of the bay would be considered that too. Wouldn't be able to harvest one anymore. Probably wouldn't be able to swim at the beach. And as the prevailing currents would slowly spread these toxins towards Riverton and Invercargill. The dolphins would, excuse me, the dolphins would really cop it because they're at the top of the food chain. They accumulate toxins in their fat cells. So they would accumulate all of these toxins. They're like sponges. Because they're at the top of the food chain, they don't pass it on to anything. They keep it inside. So all of their babies would probably not survive. And over time, I don't know how long, but they would all die out. And considering, it could be a major ecological, community, financial, council disaster, because no one really likes saying this or imagining it, but the reality is that there is real scope and potential for a disaster in this situation of the old Colac Bay dump. Considering the years of foreknowledge to prevent such a disaster, who would everybody blame? The good news is that this is entirely preventable and we have time. We have a wetland doing an amazing job of detoxifying. We have a gravel buffer that is doing an amazing job of filtration. These are assets worth protecting because we do not want the other option. And we have time, we have resources. Fingers crossed, there's funding to make the wisest decisions, management decisions possible with the best information. So we really recommend sediment testing. We need to know what we're dealing with. It's going to provide key information in order to make the wisest management decisions. We need to relook and redesignate the erosion factor at the dump. It is not low risk, it is high risk because of the accelerated erosion happening that has not been considered and it has not been incorporated. And I really hope that the rain stops, because if we do get to go see the site, then you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. The tide is going to be perfect, and hopefully the dolphins will show up too. So fingers crossed. Thank you very much for your time. If you've got any questions, then feel free to ask me anytime. Thank you.
Thank you, Gemma. Do we want to do questions now before we move on to the next speaker, or do we want to do the questions at the end, which works best for?
At the end.
At the end. Cool. Thank you. So hand over to the next speaker.
Kia ora koutou to the councillors and staff of the Southland District Council, and welcome to the surfing capital of New Zealand. My name is Lana Winders and I represent a working group appointed by the Progress League to liaise with the council on options to restore our iconic, internationally renowned surfer statue. Firstly, can I say thank you for your support with this project. Last night, we had a productive meeting with Stella, Mark and Lance, viewing options for the restoration of the statue from a variety of suppliers, including a preliminary gauge of costs and potential impacts on rates. We came away energised. It was what we needed to transition from a community brimming with passionate ideas to the next steps of consultation, supporting the procurement process and planning. There is not a surfer in the country that does not dream of the pilgrimage to the deep south of New Zealand to tackle the 29 surf breaks along the southern coast. Word of mouth is a powerful thing in the global surfing community, known for chasing the ultimate wave. And alongside the commercial spin-offs of additional tourism for our region, each surfer who visits is able to testify to the fact that you can't see icebergs from our beaches, and that Southland is, to use surfing vernacular, a mean place to visit.
In the last 20 years, international events like the Quicksilver Big Wave Challenge and the Red Bull Ultimate Waterman has attracted some of the biggest names in surfing to our bigger breaks. Like, for example, Maz Quinn, the first New Zealander to make the Surfing World Championship Tour. While the big names and sponsorships are exciting, the bread and butter comes from local businesses that have been enhanced or established using surfing as its core business. The Southland Surf School, originally founded in Colac Bay, was started by ex-New Zealand women's champion Jess Terrell. Jess has built a thriving business on the reputation of deep south surfing. Jess has, every year she attracts busloads of students from high schools throughout Southland and Central Otago coming to Colac Bay to learn to surf. She runs surfing for farmers to help get young farmers off their farms, plus of course regular public courses all year round. She leads and coordinates the summer series of surfing events, including the Southland Champs, the Secondary School Champs, and the Colac Bay Classic, which has experienced huge growth in recent years, attracting surfers from all over the country. Anchoring the growth of surfing is Colac Bay's iconic surfer statue, not only the beacon of southern surfing, but the welcome mat for weary hikers on the Te Araroa Walk, coming around the last bend of the night before a meal and a bed at the Colac Bay camping ground. So where did it all begin? 25 years ago, a small group of the Colac Bay Progress League volunteers staked a claim to Southland, erecting New Zealand's one and only surfer statue after pulling the idea out of a suggestion box. It took 2 years and just over $41,000 to build, but unfortunately funding limitations hindered what was a last-minute recommendation by the designer to coat the statue in fiberglass to combat local weather conditions and the climbing of little visitors. And so the Progress League of the day's hopes for a statue with lifelong durability came up short, leaving caretakers with the burden of maintenance that was never envisaged at the concept stage. With the benefit of hindsight, as we refresh our surfer statue, we don't want to make that mistake again. Last night, we saw options that seem to offer the level of durability we are looking for. And we will work with our community board to keep them posted on developments as the Progress League consults and finalises their preferred option and tolerance for cost. We believe the preferred option we will land on will exceed the level of funds currently set aside by council for the restoration of the surfer statue. The work done by your team to illustrate differing impacts across various cost options will have on rates, if a loan is needed to bridge the gap, was helpful last night. We will look to reduce the size of any loan as much as possible through fundraising, which has already started. We'll continue to update our community board and hope, should a recommendation come through, that it will be viewed favourably by you. To finish, I'd like to bring us back full circle to the Hector dolphins. They are part of the magic shared by hundreds of surfers riding the waves in these southern waters weekly, particularly during the summer months. Imagine you're a surfer catching a wave and seeing a Hector dolphin swimming alongside you through the same wave, just an arm's length away. It's the stuff of unforgettable, breathtaking wonder. And that's what our surfer statue shouts out to the world. Magic awaits you in these southern waves. Come see for yourself. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Lana. And I believe we've got Kevin.
Morning, everybody. My main concern is the waterfront. The year 2000, contractors from Te Anau Carriage got rebuilt our rock was all removed and a synthetic mat was laid right along the waterfront. Then the rock all replaced. To date, that wall has been 100% effective. We have no further erosion or anything, but it is now in bad state of repair. In the year 2017, myself, another member, Graham McKenzie, and your roading manager Harvey here walked the length of the bay. We identified 5 to 6 areas where the mat was badly exposed, the rock had fallen down to the sand. He said not a hard fix, which wasn't a hard fix, but there's been 7 years now and nothing whatsoever has been done. I leave it to your imagination of the further damage in that period of time. That wall is the only thing that stops the sea between the road and our homes. As I say, it has been 100% effective when it was done. We appeal to you today to please prioritise that repair and maintenance as very urgent. And it saddens us to say that we have lost all confidence in your roading manager, because for the last 7 years, all our appeals and pleas have just been prompted. So I just like you on your inspection today to see what can be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I'll open up for questions of, I guess, any of the speakers from the table. But yeah, just before I do, I'd just like to thank you all for your passionate submissions to council. It's much appreciated. So do we have any questions from Councillor Radencourt?
Thank you so much. Very emotional. I felt it very deeply myself. I want to talk around funding. Specifically around, you talked around the bus shelter. Yeah, we bus shelter down there, then we painted one. What you're talking about, and the iconic surfer. I'm chair of creative communities for Southland District, and I've brought some applications along. I wanted to talk about funding. We've got, twice a year we receive applications to that fund. I'm chronic, so I've got more money than ever before I'm out. So I wanted to talk to you about some other opportunities, but can I do that? I'm going to come back to Colac Bay later on this afternoon, and I can leave some information or catch up with you.
Would love that.
Yeah, I'm going to get Alison and Thomas for catch up. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Other questions? Councillor Menzies?
Thank you. Just a question around the sediment testing. What does it look like? What does it involve?
I don't know. I was just talking with Regan about that, and I think we need to talk to E3 scientists about that, because they will know that they do that kind of stuff. I don't know how to do sediment testing. I just know it needs to be done.
Thank you.
Councillor Byers?
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Thank you, everyone. They're very well spoken, and you've highlighted some things, some concerns that I don't think we were quite aware of some of these issues, particularly around the dump and that rock wall. I didn't realise that it had been going on quite as long as that. But the dump, you mentioned that some of the testing at the moment is, I'd understood that there wasn't any toxins in this dump or nothing of concern, but you're saying that when it's exposed to the environment, the potential for these toxins to be exposed or change the nature of the way they're contained could have a big impact. So if I understand correctly, the testing at the moment is actually irrelevant once that wall becomes, or the dump becomes exposed. Is that right?
It's not irrelevant, but it's not giving us the information, the right information that in order to make the right management decisions, because it's only sort of scratching the surface. It's not considering what could happen if that site was open to erosion, which is a really high risk that it could. So it's, the dump is assumed to be low risk because it's not factoring in the erosion. Once that erosion gets factored in, that dump's high risk.
So just a follow-up question from that, in terms of, and you mentioned kind of those 3 steps that you'd like to see with that done, and what success looks like for you. Is it kind of because you say that the wetland is kind of doing a good job of looking after that. So do you see the dump remaining in sight with the wetland still there, kind of naturally doing that work, but actually just protecting that dump site from the erosion? Or
Option.
yeah. So what would be success for you in an ideal world for the dump site?
Protection
Yeah.
from it opening out to sea.
Yeah.
And information so we know what we're dealing with.
Yeah. Councillor Duffy?
Oh, it's what has been answered.
What's the process? And I don't know if any of the staff can help, like we remove blue clips, is removing it an option or is what's?
That would be even better,
Yeah,
but a lot more
I
expensive.
mean, if it's environmental risk like blue clips, then surely funding that should be available.
Yeah, I've written a note here to talk to the Minister for the Environment as well. So yeah, I'll have those conversations.
And as regards to the rock wall, we hardly listen, but is it a big job to fix that or what's the deal there?
Yeah, so it's right, Colin. So actually over the last 5 years, probably without actually having an exact number, so probably spent $150,000 maintaining and rebuilding sections of that rock wall since 2017. So there is ongoing maintenance activity to the extent of what's seen and what previous councils have agreed to is maintaining what we have there in place. So yeah, there's periodic maintenance, with weather events, etc. That rocks shift around and do need to be put back. But from an integrity point of view, just with a few rocks may shift, but only necessarily be put back straight away, but from top to top. And will need to be put back and re-shift in position. From the road safety over the last 12 months, we haven't carried out any of that sort of maintenance, but we have monitored the aspects such as road damage and keep an eye on the extent of any damage or movement. But yeah, definitely recently. So one of the challenges associated with it is that as the rock wall, from my understanding, has been built at various stages over the life of the full length of the rock wall, it's been built at different standards, in essence. And the original rock wall was constructed very well, and the last portion that it was reconstructed, I'd say, has also been constructed very well. So the geofabrics, etc., minimize that amount of effort. But there's a section in green that hasn't got particular geofabrics behind it. It is susceptible to movement. But it's balance of effectively popping up versus removing that entire wall and rebuilding from scratch. And it's a big problem with that. But the amount of, so you're trading off, so it's periodic maintenance, so second year of versus total revision and total rebuild.
Thanks, Hayley. Councillor Menzies?
Thank you. Dean, I think in your comments you referred to or an implication about statutory duties not being complied with. Can you elaborate a bit more on what you mean by that?
So in 2019, I think it was, we shared frustration. We got legal advice from Hans van der Waal. He's an environmental lawyer, and under Environment Southland's RMA, the Intimate Land District Council, Renaka, because they own the land, are responsible for contaminant leakage from dump to land. The Environment Southland are responsible for upholding their RMI, and if that isn't done, they are also at risk of not upholding these statutory duties.
So this is a potential not to comply with statutory duties as opposed to currently not complying with statutory duties.
Potentially, yeah, potentially.
In the legal opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ruddenclaw?
The rock, I just want to talk about the rock wall. What is the process? So we've got an established piece of rock being it's been maintained. A lot of my questions are answered by Heartland. What is the process if this community wants more? Is it in the hands of the community to find the money for that, the council, or how do we create more across the protection?
Is that a question you can answer, Hartley? I can attempt to answer it.
I would say there's probably there's two aspects. One is that we have, from a funding point of view, that in essence probably sits with council. Our council would want to fund it, whether it's contribution of both local or district wide. But it's a rating funding question really. Discussion. What council is being and then the spoke for a more practical aspect, you have to file an extension from actually
No, that's one of the issues. So for consent for the environment, what sort of money is?
From recollection, when we obtained the current consent, there was initial discussions around looking at a wider consent, but that is still like that. And one of the reasons for that is around the parts of impacts to the actual marine environment and impacts on the waves, action, etc., continuing the sort of all event around. It was, I can't remember the dollars now, but there was a reasonable amount of money involved. It wasn't 20,000, we pulled somewhere from memory, around 50,000, something, etc. I think they work out.
So what's the environment itself?
Yeah, the environment side. So.
Thanks, Hartley.
Can I just quickly point out something?
Yeah, sure.
Just demonstrate, I don't know if you can see this picture, but this is this is where the rock wall finishes and the dump starts. And you can see that there's an exacerbation of erosion where the rock starts right into the dump area where it stops. I was just saying that's a really important point to make because it's actually accelerating the erosion because the wall stops there. So it's actually creating quite a critical problem where the rock wall stops. Even though it was considered to be to not harm the wave action and all of that, it's actually driving a lot of erosion focus into that edge of the dump.
And hopefully that rain stays away so we can go next to have a look. And we've got Councillor Duffy next.
Oh, just regarding the rock wall, so we talk about the rock rehabilitation, but so the synthetic, which seems to be a key part of it, are we doing anything to repair that? Where
It's only the matting that is saving us.
the matting.
You can't get, and the trouble is that matting now is so the elements. It's only a synthetic matting. So all it takes is a digger to run along the top and dig those rocks back out of the sand that fell down back and cover that matting up again. It saves a lot of gravel. Your sweepers must be costing a lot of money to sweep that road all the time, and if that matting is covered again, that problem will be solved by 80%. The other part from High Corner down to the backstop that we put in on the northeast side, there's no matting there whatsoever. And we worry about the pounding of the waves and that getting through those rocks and sucking the filling out from underneath that ditch. And in time, I'd say it will be a big problem.
There's heaps of big holes in
The
there already.
matting is vital. And as I say, in the air side of it, we have had 100% protection. It's been terrific. That we must keep up maintenance on it.
I think I've got Councillor Wilson online wanting to ask a question. If technology will play a ball in it.
Can you hear me there?
Yeah, we can. Yep.
Oh, cool. Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to ask the question. I guess it's to council of back in 2017 when council was looking at the level of service around the erosion and the potential road closure. was the dump and the risk of erosion identified at that time and considered in that decision, or was the dump issue raised and the E3 report and all of that stuff, did that happen after that decision to change the level of service along the coast was already made? And a follow-up question would be that if it wasn't considered, is there any residual funding that level of service would have changed in existing roading budgets that could then be allocated to the issue around erosion and the dump?
Is that something that you can answer, Hartley? Sorry.
Yeah, testing my memory on some of that. It was, I believe at the time, the primary concern was definitely around the road, but the risk to the dump was highlighted. But yeah, that's why if I can take the meetings of council officials, quite with them to all the detail. In terms of the funding, that was one of the factors was that if council did want to continue with any work, there would have to be 100% funded from council, and there would not be any NZTA funded subsidy available. But there was definitely a factor, because even to the extent where the wall extent was built out to whilst the last houses was coming into question as to whether council should actually have received any NZTA funding from a connectivity point of view, and they have a I suppose funding criteria of consideration for uneconomic facilities that considers whether there's other access available and credibility of access and those sorts of things. So yeah, that was definitely raised about that. If council do want to continue, they would have to council without any rate for NZTA subsidy.
I guess just to follow up for clarity, so the options of that erosion control, was that already in existing roading budgets, and the decision was to lower the level of service, and therefore the existing budgets were to be adjusted, just wouldn't be eligible for any new funding in from NZTA?
No, the funding for the type of activity was additional funding request. That's not part of this thing day-to-day roading.
The more an increase in level of service and increase.
Well, increase in funding.
Yeah.
With activity, for resilience funding these days, but then you apply for separately where there's a risk of loss of access. And that's you apply for that fund separately.
Thanks, Hartley.
Right, thanks.
Okay. Sorry, you right, mate?
Yeah, just saying thanks for that. Cheers.
Councillor O'Brien.
Through you, worship, where are you? Lana, no, that's your question yet. It's a positive thing because you're talking about the surfing culture of Southland. About 25 years ago, the Southland Institute of Technology offered a surf school, which Wayne Hill and myself were actually a part of. And I remember I had fond memories of picking up the students from SIT and bringing them out to Colac Bay and, you know, trying to teach them how to surf. I mean, I'm a very, very bad surfer, so I don't know where that kind of came into play, and it was sort of seen as probably a bit of a trinket, you know, it's like a surfing school, are you serious? But I think people have got to be wary of the wider picture in terms of what the culture brings, right? So it's not just getting on a bird board and going out on the water, but the challenging aspects of getting in the water, of trying to catch a wave. You know, there was a lot of trust out here to be developed between students and ourselves, and you know that was sort of at the genesis of when that sculpture was sort of being talked about. Now, if you fast forward and you talk about the Big Wave Surf Challenge out at Central Island, Red Bull, some of those major sponsors, and surfing for farmers is massive, and the exposure around things like mental health challenges, you know, the recreational side of things, it's all interlinked. Have you done any research with regards to the rebuilding of the sculpture? You mentioned alternative materials so that the longevity, it has a greater longevity. I'd like to know, are you going to be using materials that are unique to the area? You mentioned fiberglass earlier, but it'd be quite nice to think that we could use materials that were, from the area. And also whether some of those major sponsors, like the Red Bulls and so on, would sort of almost co-fund, or could we crowd-fund in conjunction with, joint funding from the council. Have you looked at some of those options?
We have. We've done some preliminary discussions about them. I think after this meeting and after last night's meeting, we got our first view of options and costs. It's anchored us in terms of setting goals around that fundraising effort, crowdfunding, sponsorship, opening up through social channels for donations is things that we're very keen to look into. Ideally, we'd like to be able to fund the whole thing and not have any change happen to rates. And we've got a pretty ambitious subcommittee that's keen to really look into it. So, in the last couple of months, without really doing too much work at all, we've raised close to $6,000, and that's just with, just achieving a few smaller things. But with the benefit of last night's meeting and seeing those costs and what the ongoing impact might happen in terms of rates and loans, it's been much more galvanising for us. As I said, we felt energised because now we know what we've got to go to.
Mm-hmm. And do you, sorry, you may have mentioned this, do you know what the overall budget is for the statue?
The options that we looked at last night ranged from 50,000 cost to 180,000 cost. At the top of it, we felt the option was catering to features that we didn't need. So we kind of were coming into the middle ground. And so I think I haven't really had a chance to sum it all up yet. But I think by the time we take into account what I learned about last night, consents foundation costs, we might be looking at somewhere between 30 and 150,000. And at the moment, set aside in council funding and already approved is about $33,000. So there's a bit of work to do on the fundraising side, but
Councillor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to come back to you and to the board. You mentioned in the sort of early stages of your report that there were council restrictions around the possible further improvements. Can you elaborate on?
Certainly, yes, certainly. So back in 2017, when four of us went to a council public forum, one of the speakers who's present here in the public audience had a quote from a local contractor to rework that section of Rock Hall that has already been mentioned from the left of Colac Bay Road towards the close roading. So that's round about 600 metres, might be similar. So he offered 3 days truck and digger hire for nothing to do that work. And he was told by the engineer at the time, you touch it and you'll be prosecuted. So that went nowhere. Sorry, I think it was after that meeting, but at that meeting, our former submitter presented a quote for the work to be done from the end of the current wall to the dump gate for 300,000 to 400,000. Am I right, Carol? Yeah. And then when the council asked the then asset manager how much it would cost from council to do that work, and it was 800,000. So huge discrepancy. Taken into account that quote from the local contractor didn't include the consent or the meeting, but that was huge. And the third thing was, Oh, yes, locally. So we got Don Byers out, Councillor Byers, sorry, last winter when we were concerned about the rocks that have naturally mitigated out from the really good work done in 2000, going right from the Colac Bay intersection. He offered, he said it would take 2 days and approximately $3,000 to pull those rocks up. And that's all that's really needed there. And but Don struck a brick wall there as well. So it's all related to
it's
the
related to the
walling.
wall, not related to the wall,
Oh, no, not the wall.
because the way.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So that was my question.
Right.
That you mentioned that
Correct.
right at the beginning,
Yes.
that there was some restrictions around being able to do further work.
Yes, yes. So this hall was built by the locals, really, maintained by the locals. And in recent years, we've put in a new kitchen. Yeah, but at the last the community board meeting held here in October last year, I think it was, the year before, we were told by the community facilities manager that due to health and safety, we can't really get stuck in to do structural stuff like that anymore. But that's why I put in that wee bit in there, but we're still keen and we'll find a way. We'll work together and find a way.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
people are very
There
passionate
are
about
ways,
the hall.
yeah, ways and means of going.
Yes, yeah, we'll find a way.
So it's more structural, not within structural elements
Yes, yes,
and compliance with health and safety is something the council and stuff.
yeah.
to take into account.
Cool. Thank you. I've got Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks everyone. I'm just really looking again just at that, I guess the context around 2017 with the erosion, realizing that I think council had the option of 4 options of do nothing, reinstatement, manage retreat, or hold the line. And the range of funding from the roading budget that would take was anything from $4,000 to $825,000, and council's decision of the option of reinstatement was there, but just a note in the minutes is that the decision did not stop future consideration of the other options. So I'd encourage maybe council to relook at that discussion of 2017 and just have a look at what managed retreat suggested as an option, because it does suggest a permanent realignment of the foreshore road through the former gravel pit with the existing road embankment planted with vegetation, and that seems to resonate with what's been kind of encouraged with particularly protecting that wetland and the ability of the wetlands and vegetation taking out toxins. So if there's the potential to maybe revisit the option 2 that was taken by council back in 2017 and consider whether re-looking at parts of option 3 maybe coming into play to just finish off that role, but with more mitigation around erosion around the now identified dump that I'm assuming that the gravel pit that's suggested is aligned with the dump. I'm not sure, I don't have a map in front of me, but yeah, just want to encourage maybe not retrospectively making readdressing the decisions of 2017, but look at those other options and look at the costs that were being weighed up at the time, and maybe that could help some conversations going forward with some solutions.
Thanks, Matt. Well worth considering, I think. So I've got Councillor Menzies, Councillor O'Brien, Councillor Ravenclaw, Councillor Baker, and then probably morning tea.
Yeah, just 2 questions. You mentioned you're custodian of the boat ramp. Who owns the boat ramp? Is that Southern District Council?
No, they didn't want it. Right. So originally it was built by a boating club.
Right.
And then it just fell into disrepair.
Right.
Yeah, so yeah, we put it, the community put their hand up.
Yeah.
And because of that, we can get community funding.
Yeah, I know, that's fine, that's clear. Thank you. And the second one, with Lana, and you're talking about those costs that were discussed last night. at some stage, there must, the potential costs must compare with actually, rather than rebuilding or upgrading the one you've got, to create something new. Is that one of the options, or?
Yes, yes, it is. The most expensive option was picking up the existing surface, trucking it into town, 3D imaging it, and then rebuilding it there and bringing it back. And that was unnecessarily over the top, really. We're looking for something of similar presence, but mostly we're looking for that durability, that ability to stand up to the decades without substantial amounts of maintenance, as we've had with this deliver. So, yeah, a completely different one. Built somewhere else and
It's good because I'm just thinking back to the experience of the PowerShell and redoing that one as well. So I'm sure there's some useful information coming from that experience that might assist in your decision making.
Yeah. Find the mind of the community.
Thank you.
Councillor O'Brien.
Through you, Your Worship. Dean, it's great through the Progress League, you know, that whole history is really, really good, and it's good to see that you've got that consistency and that the membership's really strong. You mentioned about the boat ramp and how, you know, we basically didn't want to bar the boat ramp, and the local contractors have sort of taken on board the maintenance and yeah, when I was there last, I could see some of the contractors, the local long-term local contractors, intergenerational families that have continually invested and maintained that infrastructure, which is great. And I hope that that continues. Does anyone have any dialogue around the steps, the concrete steps along the foreshore here? Can anyone talk to me about that, please? About where we are with progress, either yourselves or staff, or yeah, can we have a conversation about that?
And do you want to speak to that one, Sam? Well, I don't think Mark's here.
So there actually should be a contractor out there in day now to do the steps. So the contract's been awarded to builder. The steps are actually made, and we have the resource consent to with foundations to attach the steps to the rocks below. So that should be happening any day now.
Watch the space.
Yeah.
Councillor Radencourt.
So I'm going to come back to the hall. The facility, who owns this hall? Is it owned by the council or the council?
Yeah.
Has there been any discussions around Progress League taking the hall ownership over? It's still rating through council. I'm just in the process of Airwee Hall and then my area taking it over. Yes. One very little community.
Yeah, there has, and we had a meeting here, especially about that. But we don't want to become too big a business. We might be 18 strong, but 90% work fully. You know, have full-time jobs like this. Being on the Progress League is just one other community commitment that they've got. So if we build too great a business, we're going to lose members. Yeah, it's too. We'd love to, because this hall's got passion, community passion, but we don't want to create too big a business. And then what happens in 5 years' time when we only have 8 members? You know, like the Progress League has had waves of highs and lows. I think we're at a high at the moment, but it's had periods of lows. So we don't want to be rash in decision making and create problems for the future.
Volunteer burn out, but you guys are amazing. So thank you.
And I'll take the final question from Councillor Baker-Roy, and then we can have a break for morning tea.
Just a couple of comments here. One, following Councillor Matt's talking about revisiting the decision and whether it was managed retreat or what. I think some of this will happen next year once the National Framework for Coastal Adaptation is put forth. So some of these local decisions might just be put into a national framework, and we'll have to see what comes out of that one. But I wonder if I may ask Hartley at this point to Karen's question, when you answered saying that we've spent $150,000 odd on the wall, and there's obviously not enough satisfaction with what has happened. You mentioned that there is limitations within the resource consent to the extent of the work we can do. Are you able to elaborate on that?
Yes, I can.
Thank
So
you.
the resource consent effectively allows for the maintenance of the existing structure. So if we want to extend the structure to the east or northeast, then we need a new resource consent. So what I mean by it's not the main, the resource consent as such doesn't necessarily limit us
What we can do?
to the existing. We want to go outside of the scope of the existing board. That's when we need a new resource consent.
So are we heading towards a trigger point here where it looks like we may have to look at that?
In terms of maintaining the existing board, I'd say no.
Right.
But to, I suppose, the points raised earlier around whether council would do extending the wall or not, then yes, we would. That's
But the current structure as it is, you are satisfied with what we're able to do there?
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we've got a nice simple recommendation here that we acknowledge the attendance of the representatives from the Colac Bay community, which I'll happily move from the chair and just thank you once again for your passionate presentations. It's great to be here and your patch and hearing from you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Byers? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Anyone against? Please be. It's carried. Be a good chance now to break for morning tea. And we'll come back at 22.
Yeah. You know, like, I printed it out too, and I left it in, on the print queue.
How are we looking, Andrew?
Andrew?
Are we back online? Cool, welcome back, everybody. And a special thank you to the Colac Bay Progress League for the nice scones and morning tea. Much appreciated. So our next item on the agenda is, I'll get to the right page, 7.2, the Mayor's Report, which is on page 107. And we've got apologies from Tony Philpott, the Wallace Takatimu Community Board Chair. The recent weather has put him to work, so he's unable to make it today. And we've got Anne Horrell from the Tuatapere Te Waiwai Community Board, and we've also got Neil Linscott, who's been with us. And
He's been called away.
Oh, yeah, cool. So I'll just start with the Mayor's Report, which I'll take as read, and I'll open up for any questions on that. And if there's none, I'll, sorry, Councillor Pickles.
Bit of busy time. I just want to push the creation funding again.
Yeah.
Around the table, it's the end of this month, and there's some money in the wash. So get a number of communities, and I have put some recommendations. Big one.
Thank you. And then without further ado, I'll hand over to Chair Horrell from the Tuatapere Te Waiwai Community Board. Welcome, thanks for coming along.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Nice to see you and councillors, staff members. Just a little reminder, if you want to ask a question, please have to say it loudly. I forgot to wear my hearing aids. Poor Jerry can roll his eyes because that is a bit of an issue I've got of forgetting to wear my hearing aids. Okay, so thank you for the opportunity to be able to speak with you today about Tuatapere Te Waiwai Community Board. You'll be aware, of course, that we've had the issue of the code of conduct issue recently, and needless to say, although harrowing, it has been a real learning experience, and for me personally, a real eye-opener. That is that everything must be transparent and well communicated, and to remember that what we personally may think to be clear and positive is not always perceived to be that by others. As a board, I believe we are stronger because of this journey we've undertaken. We've had many discussions and some soul searching, and the Tuatapere Te Waiwai Community Board is a strong, robust team. We appreciate Councillor Derek being part of the team and his input from the council table. I'd like to say a huge thank you to Stella and Rachel, who are our regular support group and who are both amazing in their respective roles. Despite the dilemma we have faced in the past month, there is lots of positivity in our board area. The three main communities being Totapuri, Monowai/Blackmount and Oropuki. Each is unique and has its idiosyncrasies and priorities. The Monowai, Blackmount and the Oropuki communities have within them a village committee and promotions group, a bit like Colac Bay, and a bit like Colac Bay community. They are very independent and active and really work together at supporting everybody in their community. They really are quite impressive. Members of the Monowai Village Committee met with some board members and staff members earlier in the year to discuss their concern re mowing. I think I might have mentioned the last time I reported at the end of last year that a lovely local chap had been busy at Monowai for many years, mowing, looking after the water supply, looking after lots of things, free of charge, just doing it voluntarily, his petrol being paid for, and he died sadly. And so now, of course, a contractor has been brought in from Te Anau. It has meant an increase in rates, and the people of Monowai are not that happy in the fact that it's irregular and not necessarily done as well as Peter used to do it. So we actually have had quite a discussion about the possibilities of them becoming the preferred contractor. And so further discussions will take place in that regard, and we're hoping that that will be a reality going forward. And indeed, for all of our small communities that we're involved with, I guess the big thing, and Derek and I were talking about it earlier, if we can promote it, to try and encourage more and more use of our local contractors and the talented people we already have in our communities. Our last formal meeting took place at Blackmount, and we went to the community centre there. I had huge turnout, and it was wonderful. So we had great chats beforehand and afterwards, and we've also been to Oropuki to have a formal meeting there as well, and we will do that again later in the year. Peter Baker spoke to us at Blackmount about the facilities and different things that are being, services that are offered there at Blackmount. One of the big issues, of course, is that one of the things they look after is a fire service up there, and they're looking at Monowai, how they can better provide a water tank, and so we talked about maybe one on wheels. So again, further discussion will take place there, but they're a great community. Oropuki Promotions Group have also met with board members and staff members in regard to concerns and project issues. One of the projects planned is the upgrade of the historic railway water tower. And it was very encouraging to find that the present location is not the original and the supporting structure is not old. It was replaced about 20 years ago. So the project cost will not be as it was first anticipated. And that we don't have to go through an authority process with Heritage New Zealand. So that's good news. In recent months, there's been quite an issue with a racehorse owner training his racehorse on the Hurstville domain in the middle of winter, creating a huge mess and damage to the field. And this has meant that now signage has had to be put up to say that horses are not allowed on the grounds and dogs have to be on a leash. It's a bit sad, really, that this has happened, because in the past, recreational use of horses has actually taken place where they may have been part of a horse trek and gone through the ground, but now it means that they can't be on there. So, of course, that created a huge amount of mess in the middle of winter. The community have also been concerned, and you're going to Monkey Island today. They've been very concerned about some of the overstayers, and the facilities are just being put under too much pressure to be able to accommodate the high use. It has been agreed that it's very difficult to monitor and control the length of stays, and it's very difficult to control also the behaviour on the beach, where maybe motorbikes are right where people, families are, and it's a very tricky situation. It has been for some time, and it's a constant part of the discussion. The Oropuki Fire Brigade are very concerned about the inability of their water tanks to now hold sufficient water to deal with the fire. The tanks are old and leaky, so quotes have been sought for replacement, and our staff will help the promotions group in the seeking of funds to replace those tanks. Totapuri Railway Station has been a prominent subject for many years. Following a survey in 2020, it was evident that the Totapuri community were keen to retain it, There's no doubt that some people would be quite happy to put a match to it, but the majority wanted to retain it, and so that was the decision. We'll go with that. So, so then in 2022, a consultation took place as to the scope of the what's the project going forward, and a plan was drawn up by consultants in addition to a Main Street upgrade. This year, a request for information document was made available for those wishing to submit ideas and plans for use of the station going forward. As a result, a response was received from the then to be formed Chortapuri Railway and Heritage Trust Board, indicating the intention to run the station as a charitable trust for the benefit of the community. This includes restoration following historical plans, running as an information centre, with the option for a commercial lease to assist with ongoing costs. The trust will also have access to the already allocated $210,000 Better Off funding. This is very exciting, and we're really delighted as a board to be able to endorse this proposal and look forward to the progress going forward. So it's quite exciting for Tuatapere, and the people that are part of this board are really passionate and enthusiastic, and I think it's going to be a great positive thing for Tui. Sadly, we as a board recognise, and the staff, that the Clifton Hall is no longer viable as a community asset. It receives very little to no use, and therefore it's deteriorating in its condition. Staff are currently preparing a report for the board's October meeting, suggesting a process of future options. You might also realise the Uralia Community Centre, an accident took place, which has meant that the Uralia Community Centre has been out of action for some months. And so I think now that there's some plans have been drawn to look at renovation for that. And so hopefully that will be able to be up and running again, because it actually receives a large amount of use for that area. And it would be great for the Clifton folk. The Tuatapere Domain ring fence. Now, those of you who've been to our lovely Tuatapere Domain, the children out there, will remember that beautiful white fence that goes all the way around. And it's been there for nearly 100 years. And so it's got to the end of its life, sadly, but it has served a great purpose. So the community, particularly the Rugby Club Domain Board, the community board, we all took great idea to replace it. And it was talked about that maybe replacing it in sections, which would be more, affordable in stages, but then decided it would be better to do it all at once and get it all done. And so as a result, the Rugby Club have been successful in getting funds of $20,000, around $20,000 for the Tuatapere Amenities Trust, and we've also allocated $20,000 from unbudgeted expenditure. So that's really exciting that they were able to carry on now with getting that ring fence replaced. So it's already been taken down, the old one, and now it's we're looking forward to seeing a new one. And they're planning on that, hopefully have that up by the time we have the New Year's Day sports, which is a great occasion. Due to vandalism and damaged turf at the Tuatapere Domain, a barrier gate is to be installed on Elder Drive, which is the entry to the domain, which will be locked during the hours of darkness. This has been quite a controversial thing at Tuatapere, and quite a few people have let me know that they're not very happy about it. Always been able to just go in and out whenever we want, And now, of course, it will be, this has been a recommendation by Tuatapere Police, and they say that actually the installation of gate will actually end up being less expensive than having to deal with the issues they've had to deal with vandalism to buildings, to the rugby club breaking in there, to the damage to the turf with the rugby on the rugby grounds. And so that will take place. There is a little bit of a discussion at this point exactly where it will go, so that's in the right place, but that will happen. Last year we had huge damage to the Whale Rugby Club, which is in the domain because of that huge weather event we had about this time last year. And so the rugby club has had extensive renovation, and a ditch running along two sides of the domain has been cleared of debris and foliage to help prevent flooding. ES have also removed willows from either side of the Whale Bridge, and ongoing discussions in regard to flood mitigation will continue, as the area is still very vulnerable. And that was been obvious with this last weather event we've had. Everybody's been nervously, the number of cars that have been going in and out of the main, checking on the water level, like the constant traffic, checking on where it's at. And there's no doubt it's not perfect yet. The Tui Trails group continue to do a fantastic job of looking after our native bushwalks, and that's a really positive thing. The Waiau Mountain, a state of emergency was a stressful time for our mountain residents and for our local community as well. Obviously some work has been done, but that's an issue which of course it continues, and they are still very concerned whenever there's a heavy rainfall in High River. Our schools, Colac Valley Primary and Waiau School, continue to be busy, actively engaged in the community and busy providing great learning opportunities for our local children. Waiau Area School have reached out to us and have said that they're very keen to be involved in future projects with Community Board and wherever they can, which is really cool. They've got a great staff, as do Colac Valley Primary, and they're very active in the community. I'd like to thank the staff members who visit regularly, apart from Stella and Rachel, Mark, Lance, Tim, and we've got Sean coming next week. And yeah, thank you for the opportunity to be able to deliver.
Thank you, Anne. That was a very detailed and very interesting report. Really appreciate it. And it's great to see, similar to today, when you go out into the smaller communities, you actually get a really good turnout. I was talking to Dean over morning tea, and we had a really good turnout here before today. It's
it was like that, yeah. Yeah, right.
So yeah, no, so it's great to see, and it highlights, I guess, the importance of going out into smaller communities as well.
Very much. Really important. Yeah.
And also great to hear the school showing an interest in the community board too, starting them young.
That's right, and the numbers are very good. Particularly Waiau Area School went through quite a drop, but it's come back up, and it's thriving.
Cool. Are there any questions for Anne from around the table? Councillor O'Brien?
Worship, and once again, you just consistently have this great report on your area. It's pretty exciting what's going on in the area. Do you, with the Huntridge track going from a heartland walk to a great walk, and it's opening, I believe, at the end of October, has there been sort of a bit of a excitement, or has there been any other businesses, local businesses in Tuatapere? I know historically they've sort of been up and down.
Very much.
And with the great walk status, has there been a sort of a shift in attitude or a feeling within the town that there's a positive future associated with the Huntridge and opportunities for local businesses, or are we doing enough as community boards or councils or as a region in order to be able to promote this great walk status?
I think there's great enthusiasm, Tom, in our community, and there has been quite a bit of discussion about what we can do going forward. Certainly, when we looked at the part of the Main Street upgrade, there's also that about creating a little bit more of an attractive space, looking at empty buildings that are just sitting there, trying to think how we can be a bit creative about making it look more attractive. And it's interesting because in regard to accommodation, at this stage, it's mainly Tui Base, and which has facilities for backpackers as well as motels, and we've got Last Light Lodge. But it's interesting, over the last few weeks, I've actually heard a few people mention about that wouldn't it be nice to see the Waiau Hotel open again? And that certainly would really open up another facility, and particularly with the railway station development, which is right across the road. Yeah, so no, there's great enthusiasm, and there's lots of discussion about what we can do positively going forward. Yeah.
Councillor Chamberlain?
I'll just follow on that. I think there's a real opportunity too in Tuatapere if we can create the enthusiasm of businesses, and I know we'll talk about housing later on, but there's got to be a real opportunity in Tuatapere to open up more land for housing and have the opportunity for people to come and live there and start up businesses. Great walk.
We are finding, and Derek and I were speaking about this earlier, that's absolutely true. Obviously, places like Riverton and Te Anau are obvious places where you're looking at spatial planning, but it's interesting in Tuatapere, it's very difficult for people to find housing or renting. It's very difficult now. And we have had quite an influx over the last few years of people deciding to get away from the big city and come to a small place like Tuatapere. Oropoki has had so many new residents. It's not funny, it's great. So yes, I think Derek's right. If we could look at that going forward, it would be great.
Yep, definitely. Councillor Duffy.
Yes, thank you, Anne. Just on that housing, I remember George Harper used to say quite often at that particular stage in time, the banks were not very encouraging of people buying into a takery.
Okay.
So has that changed now? I mean, I hope it has. But obviously houses must be of higher value now than they were.
Oh, they are, most definitely. They are.
So
I don't know I can't answer that, sorry, Paul, as to whether banks are discouraging. I haven't heard that. Have you, Derek?
No, I haven't, but I think it's probably more people wanting to relocate, say from a bigger city.
I just wonder if that is a case, and
that would be very unfortunate. That is the case.
Perhaps some contact needs to be made with banks, just showing them what positives are out there.
But I think there's too many empty houses in Tuatapere.
No, well, that's
no, there are.
Councillor Graney.
Thank you, Your Worship. And thank you for your report.
My pleasure.
That was really interesting. I'm just curious, you mentioned your railway restoration project.
Yes.
And the better off funding.
Yes.
So there's obviously, from what I can gather, you're far enough along the line to make sure you can use that funding before the deadline.
Yes, yes. In fact, already I didn't mention, I omitted the fact that already quite a lot of repair work has taken place, and that's been done on a voluntary basis. So over 100 hours of repair work has already taken place. So in actual fact, that the ones that have been doing that are very quick to say the deterioration is not as great as some would think. So no, that they are certainly planning to get cracking with spending that. And the piles were all replaced some years ago, and there's everything's connected, water, sewage. It's not going to be too huge a project. Certainly not as big as what some have anticipated.
That's good to hear. Councillor Byers.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Anne. You mentioned the lawn mowing in Wangawai, and the cost is a bit of a concern for the local community. Has there been any discussion about them mowing their own virgins?
Yes, absolutely. And that's one of the things we're going to be looking at going forward, Dom, is about them taking over the contract. And so going through the process of being able to do that and doing that for themselves. We've also had that discussion with Oropoki, in fact, not the main corridor, not the main road corridor, but the either on the sides, outside the main corridor of the town. But yes, they're very enthusiastic. So they've so that will be just a matter of further discussions, but I think that would be really cool. Yeah, because obviously the increase in rates has affected everybody, and they are as entitled as anybody to have their lawns run. But it would make a big difference generally. Hopefully.
Cool. Oh, it sounds like lunch has arrived. So, sorry, did we? Oh, sorry, Sam.
A brief comment that its chair is over online the staff people we're supportive of that direction. Given that we have time to lead into the potential change there, that we're working through alongside the community.
I'm sorry, Sam. I'm sorry, I missed.
I was saying there that we're a staff level working alongside the community and with the community board to potentially help that change, that local mowing approach.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Yeah, thanks, Sam.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks. Cool. And on that note, I'll thank you once again for your very detailed report, and we'll adjourn for lunch back at 12:30. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian.
I Those projects get complete probably, but I think that's and they carry 4,000 bars left, so you can see. And because the explanation just and
Right, have we adjourned for lunch? Oh, okay, go on.
But no one's in a hurry.
And did you move? Did you move your?
No, I didn't. I'll do that after lunch.
Yeah, sure. I
And the people say so this was one
Just go back to that last report, and I'll move from the chair that we received the mayor's report. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, councillor Boper. Aye. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Anyone against? That is carried. Okay, so we're going to jump now into our submissions for the representation review, and I'll hand over to Robin at the head of the table. And I'll welcome, we've got some guests online as well, and we've got Peter in person, so welcome. Thanks, Robin.
Good afternoon, everyone. So the purpose of this report is to receive written submissions on council's representation proposal and also to provide an opportunity for people to speak to their submission. Just to provide a bit of context for this report, council has to review its representation arrangement at least once every 6 years and ensure that the arrangement provides fair and effective representation of the communities in the district. So this involves looking at aspects like council's ward and community board structure and the number of elected members. So council staff talked to members of the community about council structure and fair and effective representation in late 2023, developed and sought feedback on 4 representation options earlier this year, and then presented a proposal that was adopted by council on 16 July 2024. So council consulted on the proposal for 5 weeks from 26 July. 22 submissions were received during the consultation period, and 2 submitters would now like to speak to their submissions. One person who initially wished to speak has pulled out due to sickness, and that's Rebecca Dawson. Our speakers today are Federated Farmers, and Eleanor Linscott will speak to Federated Farmers submission, and we also have Pete McDonald here in person. So just before we hear from them, I'd just like to highlight that the next step in the process is formally considering the submissions, looking at options on how to proceed, and deciding a final proposal for public notification. So I'll hand over.
Cool. Thank you, Robin. And I guess just at this point, acknowledging the work of the work group chaired by Councillor Keast, and it's been a very thorough, well-run process. So thank you to that team as well. So have we got an order for the speakers? Cool. So Pete, so we've got Jason and Eleanor there online. Can you hear us all right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Cool. Welcome along, and yeah, I'll hand over to you to speak to your submission.
Thank you. So Jason will be speaking on behalf of Southland Federated Farmers. So thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for having us along today to speak to our submission. I firmly believe that it's important that we front up and talk to our submissions to explain our position. So yes, we've put in a submission, and I'll take that as read. I really want to dive into the detail why this is important. I think this is one of the most important submissions that we do across all councils. I think it's very clear that and everyone's on the understanding we think that the system is broken right across all councils. Okay, and it's not just to do with representation; it's to do with everything. We fully support the notion to explore other options to chase efficiencies across all of our councils. And I don't think we need to be talking about cost savings. It's more about chasing efficiencies and how we can make things more efficient for our ratepayers right across Southland. So all ratepayers get the best benefit and bang for their buck, so to speak, and really support those conversations to be had right now while these representation reviews are going on. I think it's very timely that we have these conversations and explore the option of all of our councils coming together and the use of unitaries. So, Eleanor, would you like to continue on?
Yeah, I guess we were just sort of looking at in terms of the timing with the representation review and also with the timing of the discussion about the combining with other councils. It's sort of using that opportunity now to be engaging with the wider community about what that vision for the district and the wider region looks like. It's sort of like it's a perfect opportunity to be looking towards the future, what is going to be best for the community. And I think one of the key points in our submission was that at the end of the day, we don't want, you know, all ratepayers to be in a worse off position. So having those engaging with the community, and I think Jason, Federated Farmers are keen to be part of that sort of stakeholder engagement and working with the council in looking at what those options could be, like to be part of that process is something that you would be comfortable with. So I just think it's a very good opportunity now. There's an awful lot of other councils looking at sort of similar situations in their own districts and regions. So we're just keen to make sure that where ratepayers end up is in a better position.
Cool. Thank you. And thank you for taking the time to speak to your submission as well. We really appreciate people that A, take the time to write into us, and also B, take the time to come along and present. It's really appreciated. Do we have any questions from the floor for the team? There being none, thank you very much. Sorry, yeah,
Rob,
Matt.
I'm happy to ask a question actually. Thanks for your submission. Just regarding this representation review, because it's a local government act requirement to do this process at this time, the process has been kind of undertaken prior to the discussions of that future potential reorganization or redesign, however it could be described. Through the working groups in developing the representation proposal that was put out, there had been mention to the local Future for Local Government review. I'm just curious, has Federated Farmers made a submission or any comment regarding the Future for Local Government report that came out last year in terms of its potential recommendations for reorganisations? Or
from the National Fed's point of view, I think they have, but off the top of my head, I'm not sure. I don't have that in front of me, but National Feds do take an interest in that at that level.
So when you talk about the opportunity to have this discussion with the community and the wider stakeholders, is what you're suggesting is that this kind of representation review for councils should be acknowledging kind of that wider approach to the future of local government?
I think when we were looking at this, writing this submission, we were looking at it through the lens of Southland, the Southland district, in terms of the ratepayers that are here, and sort of looking at it. So it's because we had done the submission for the long-term plan, and then we did this submission as well. So we were looking at that in that local lens and that context. But Feds, as a national organisation as well, does submit at that government level. But in this particular situation, this submission is from Southland Federated Farmers in the context of the people who live here in this community.
So they do support these conversations to be had, but do think it needs to be localised. All right. So within the provinces, it needs to remain because each province has their own issues at play to sort out. So it can't be negated from a national level. It needs to be negated from a provincial level.
So Southland Federated Farmers need to be at the table for these future discussions.
Absolutely.
Cool. No, thanks for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Byers.
Thanks, Your Worship. I was wondering, Jason, if this discussion around the future of local government, have you got some examples of where amalgamation and larger bureaucracy has resulted in some efficiencies for local ratepayers?
I think the efficiencies that we're mainly pointing towards is the need to go to multiple entities for consent for the same thing. And I'll point out one in particular that has been of huge issue for farmers of late is to put a wintering barn in. We need consent from both regional council and district council. And it's become an issue when one council has an issue with it and the other council doesn't. All right, so, and it's also doubling up on costs when it doesn't need to happen. So there's one efficiency that can be chased if we have an amalgamation of councils across Southland. And we could dive into those sorts of examples a lot deeper because there's plenty of them.
Yeah, I think it would be good to have a good idea of efficiencies that have been already achieved in councils across the country through amalgamation. So, I mean, that's going to be a good discussion to have.
Yeah, I don't think we can take amalgamations from other councils across New Zealand as an example because there's some negatives and positives in all of it. I think we need to concentrate solely on a local level and what we can chase here as efficiencies in our own province and not compare apples against pears across the country because we all have different issues that we're all facing.
And I think it's also looking. It's the opportunity to look at everything in the context of Southland, isn't it? It's sort of, we can look across the fence and see what other councils have done, but it's got to be something that works here. And it's basically looking at what all of those different options are. So, yeah.
And that's why it's important to involve the wider public.
Yeah, for sure. No, thank you very much for that. Really appreciate you once again taking the time. So I'll move on to our next submitter now, which is Peter McDonald. So you're welcome to come up to the table. Floor is yours.
Thank you. Firstly, I know a few of you here. My name's Peter McDonald. I'm a farmer, but I'm also a councillor for Environment Southland. I just want to say, it's a bit nerve-wracking sitting. I sort of know what it's like now. I'll get done with the previous life before I come to council. But I just want to, first of all, say thank you for the opportunity, just like Jason's here, coming to talk to you. Often at our council, people use the term over-consulted. They get talked and asked questions too much. I don't accept that at all. Under-consulting, being under-consulted is far worse in my view. So, look, you would have read my submission and it's pretty blunt and short. I've got to admit, it's probably got a wee bit of a aggressive tone. I wrote that, I think, the night after I come back from the Winton Community Board meeting that a few of us were here at. There was quite a bit of kerfuffle. It was widely reported in the papers, so I won't talk about that too much, but I'll probably speak in a bit more softer terms as I go through this anyway. But it did have an effect on me. And I guess I want to really, the thread over all of this is the previous discussions with federated farmers around council reform. Where that will go, no one knows, but it will go somewhere for the reasons that we all understand, is that there is massive deficits sitting on the horizon, infrastructure deficits for all councils sitting on all that horizon. So with that being said, my concern is local representation in a local voice. And
this council, the district council's always been really good at local democracy. I'll just say that straight off. You've got to be, in this meeting here today demonstrates that fact that you do that really well. What I'm going to ask you is that you go even further and try even harder around the local community boards. For the reason is that when there is some sort of reform, and there will be, and it will most likely be quite messy and uncontrollable, let's be honest, and will be in a state of flux for some time. The concern for people, in my experience, is if you provide them with a saving and they understand that their local voice will be at risk, they will reject a saving every time. So it's ensuring through the entire process, or whatever that might be, that you're there to protect their voice. So any aggregation of services to create scale, to drive savings, will ultimately provide a threat to their local voice. So I'm here today to ask you, to ask the council, that now start early on this process, looking at your community boards. What more can you do? So I've got a couple of suggestions. Now, these are things that you probably already know, and you'll say, well, Pete, you can't do those, or that can't be done. That's fine. I haven't researched this greatly, as you'll see. If you ask me questions, I probably won't be able to answer them. But I'm talking about some safeguards for the community. I was there at that meeting, like some of you were, I mentioned earlier, and I was outside of the meeting as the locals streamed out of the hall, and the mutterings and the conversations, they were really upset. And for me, it sort of felt as though they lost a bit of their voice that day. Wrongly or rightly, that's the way they felt. I don't want to dwell on this too much, but I'm going to. I attended the meeting, and I went back into the meeting, and you were there, Rob, and the chief executive, and we also, and I couldn't follow a public notified agenda. I had to pick it up and have a look at it, and I was completely lost. And I may have been reading it wrong, but I saw 3 items pulled up out of the blue. I don't know where they come from, onto an agenda that wasn't notified for the public. So I look at probably governance training. Is that something you could brush up on more for the boards, for a new lot of members coming through in 2025? I'd assume you probably already do that. And I'd also speak to my experience of those board meetings are usually held on a Monday, and a couple of times I've opened up the Facebook page, and here's on the Winton page the outputs of that meeting by an individual board member put up on the Facebook page disguised as minutes. I'd expect to see prepared for the chair or through the chair at the bottom, none of that. So these are just basic safeguards around democracy and around structure that I think there needs to be some understanding. So that's just a couple of examples and suggestions. Standing orders, as I understand, please correct me if I'm wrong, do not have to be adopted by a board.
Standing orders do.
They carry on from the previous board to the next, to the next, to the next. Is that correct? So there is a set of standing orders there to be adhered to, or points of order made. Is that correct?
Yep.
Code of conduct.
Code of conduct. Yes. So I'll get onto that, the code of conduct. Are these two pieces of equipment that could provide some protection for the community? And maybe have a look at those. I would suggest too, if you have the ability, any pre-election material for candidates to clearly state their intentions around adopting or adhering to these two important bits of I call them safeguards, really, for the meeting procedures and for the community. And sitting here, I'm not trying to curtail voice or local democracy, but I think it's really important as we go forward. I'll just reiterate that again, as we go forward, and local amalgamation or whatever that will be, that we have to strengthen these local groups. Absolutely. And I see this as the district council being central to that, because communities will coalesce around these community boards that will be their local voice. To a point, you know, I could imagine in this community, Colac Bay, or every other regional community, during these uncontrolled discussions around local government reform, they would say, what have I got from Chicago? And that would be a fair comment. So that's where the localism comes in. So that's what I'm advocating for. So also, I think I'm right in saying that on the boards, there is a local district councillor that sits on those boards with voting rights.
Appointed to the board, yeah.
I would suggest maybe looking at on some of the larger boards and the larger representation, putting that up to 2. And look, whether you can do that or not, but it's just a suggestion, mainly for the reasons of continuity and again, community safeguards. So you have some sort of semblance of that continuity going through from council down to the boards too. So that's all I've got written down on all my scribbles there, I think. Yes. So look, I'm happy to take some questions. If you want to fire some things away, can't be guaranteed that I can answer them. I'm very confident, but I'll give it a go.
No, thank you, Pete. And yeah, once again, like with Feds, I appreciate you taking the time to not only write, but also travel out to Colac Bay to present to us in person. It's yeah, much appreciated. Just a question from me before I open up to the floor in terms of the community boards. So you're aware we've got 9 community boards in total, and you're aware that we've had, obviously the one that you're referring to has had a little bit of a bumpy ride, but the other 8 on the whole have been functioning really well.
Yeah, I'll look and that was a point at the start about this council historically does democracy really well. Yeah. So I absolutely do accept that. Yeah. But we need to lift it up a level during a reform process and all the way through that, because we know over half Southland's population lives in Invercargill, and we need to keep our voice raised in the region.
Yeah, no, thanks, Pete. Question from Maggie.
Thanks to you, Robert. Comment. Thanks for coming. Great to have your voice at our table, Pete. The Reti Community Board, the councillor would be a unique board with 3 councillors, and my hope Toy was the other one with 2 councillors in the area. The reason why there's only 1 vote from a councillor is because we wanted it to be the community board's decisions rather than the councillors, just so you're aware of the picture of it. I love that you're talking about strengthening community boards and their community voices and that localism. I too am concerned with the posts that have been put up. Misinformation around their community board meetings and the public, what they're seeing. So, but I appreciate you coming to the table, putting it out there, and yeah, we want our communities to feel safe as well when they come into these meetings. And I understand how people felt when they left that meeting.
Yeah, no, thank you very much.
Yeah. Yep, sorry, just a procedural reminder too, just questions for clarification rather than just, did you have a question there? Or? No. Cool. So yeah, no, thank you, it's all right. Any other questions, Councillor O'Brien?
Through your worship. Thanks, Pete. Great to see you. The submissions, whether it be from federated farmers or Te Awa Marama, or your likes of yourselves or the general public, they all seem to have a consistency associated, which is great, associated with the general feeling in our communities. And yours reflects that as well in here. My question to you is, based on the experience that you've had, and the ongoing importance of succession planning and representation from a community board perspective, what are you going to do from here on in order to be able to illustrate the importance of what you're saying from a succession planning perspective?
Well, that's a pretty good question. Thanks very much for that. I guess I'm here today to really emphasise the strengthening. I don't know all the details and I don't know exactly how you would do that, but I think you've got to really look deep inside those boards and really strengthen the voice and the representation, their skill, because it is a really important community service. So I would start on that right away. Don't start once the messy reform business, whatever shape that takes. We've got no idea. When that starts to happen, people will immediately, very quickly, be really concerned about their losing their voice in their community. So that has to be preempted by that work starting in earnest, I believe. So I'm pretty sure the skills are around this table and within your council. And like I said, you do local democracy really well. And I think you'll come up with those answers yourself. It's no secret, I'm a big believer in some type of reform. I think the status quo is unsustainable. I'm very clear on that, but I see as a large impediment to getting the model that we need to deliver the service that the community expects and at the value that the community expects. We have to deal with local democracy and representation first at its heart in the communities, or else it'll go nowhere.
So it's about finding a balance between, I suppose, the local, the people sentiment around maybe looking at forming a unitary scenario as an example. So we're trying to look at efficiencies, we're trying to cost savings, but also, having a discussion with someone at lunchtime, someone from this local community saying, that's great, but we also have to be very, very careful that we have an insurance plan associated with retaining our community voices, right? So it's trying to find the balance between the two. So therefore the stakes are going to be raised, right? So the stakes are going to be raised in terms of, if we distill this down from a governance level, a representation level that halves the number of councillors or whoever it is, then it's their job to then liaise between the community boards twice as hard.
I think you've defined that question. That's the key question. I'm making sure of that, isn't it? And it comes down, also I'd add proportionality. The fear is that you'll have a big council sitting in Invercargill with massive budgets making decisions. And that's why I urge that we get going with representation now at a local level to strengthen that even better than it is now. So you've defined the question yourself, that which is the key question. It's that not too hot, not too cold spot that we've got to hit.
Cool, thank you.
I just confused you.
No, I'm just, I don't know the answer. I don't know.
Yeah, but that's the thing. We'll work that out as we go along in this process. Yeah, and I'm convinced there's good people here and other councils and around the province that will work things out as we go. We've just got to make the first step. And I thank the Mayor for putting that out there for that first step.
Thanks, Pete.
Just conscious of time as well. We've got three more questions, one from Councillor Wilson, and then Councillor Duffy, and then Councillor Byers, and then we'll probably have to call that to a close. Matt?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. And thanks, Peter. Thanks for your submission, and thanks for coming down to Colac Bay. Sorry, I can't be there today. I'm just noting on your submission, or your oral submission today, you're mentioning the ensuring that local voice and how to go approach that going forward with a reorganisation that you say will come, whatever it may look like. In regards to this representation review, two of the options out for consultation was regarding the Otamita Valley and also the Nokamai road property, Nokamai Station, and from a representation point of view, bringing them across to their communities of interest, being Northern Southland or into the Oriti Community Board area. As far as, I guess, being a regional councillor, your representation models are more based on catchment for environmental reasons. How would you say that local voice can be ensured for environmental and community issues based on the fact that catchments, whether environmental river catchments or communities of interest based on the way that roads connect or local economies and schools and things like that, how can you, do you have any suggestions of how you can ensure local voice but with both of those different perspectives, knowing that it's quite hard to geographically align those? Have you got any comments on that from this like specific representation options that have been out for consultation?
Thanks, Matt. I knew you'd come up with a question.
Sorry.
No, I've got some opinions, but of course, when we talk about elections, and I notice next week there is a hui in Invercargill reimagining Matara. Hui, and they will be talking about governance at local levels in regards to catchments and river management. So this is where things tend to be heading. It tends to be heading back to the locals to take charge of their own situations. Centralising is devolving out to the regions because the need is better understood by the locals. So how do you match the catchments up? Of course, catchments go from outside of this province, don't they, into South, and that's very difficult. All I can just do is just make some loose comments, Matt. I can't really talk about that too much because I haven't really investigated it.
I guess it's all part of the conversation to come, right?
Oh, yes, very, very complex. Yeah.
Thanks, Peter.
Thanks, Peter.
Councillor Duffy.
Yes, thank you, Richard. Peter, getting back to the community board situation that you sort of raised as a concern, would you agree that the success of democracy is largely dependent on sound people with open minds standing and being elected? Could a solution actually be in making or encouraging the right people to stand in your own communities, which could yield a much better result for the community as a whole? Yeah, there's a tendency, I think, for election day to come around. We thought about candidates, and then in the last minute, some people put their names forward, and really consider put any thought into who they would like to represent.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment, and I would say it's a pretty hard environment out there at the moment. Any type of leadership right across this country, probably across the world. Like I'm in an environment, Southland councillor, and I walk into a room, sometimes you think someone's died. And then the heads go down and all of a sudden people change. You would have noticed that too. You don't say that you're a councillor, that's the last thing you want to say to people and bring them. But that's not, doesn't foster leadership or engagement, does it? And it's not until you get to a certain age, I think, that you get to a point that you don't really care what anyone thinks. You might better, some of you might better identify with that. I know some but it is a real problem, and it's a real problem in farming leadership, especially throughout the country, that these issues are so contentious. We're dealing with now that there's a lot of people out there that say, well, I don't really want to have anything. I know that I contribute, but I don't really want to be part of it. It's a big issue, and I don't really have any answers for that. But that's the environment that we're in.
Thanks, Paul. And councillor Byers, and then the final question from councillor Radical, because we have gone well over time.
Thank you, Worship. Well, thank you, Peter. You actually, a few minutes ago, you touched on what I was wanting to ask you. You're talking about strengthening local community. And I think you were saying devolving some of the control back from councils to communities. I was wondering if you could just expand on that a little bit.
Okay, probably not, wasn't suggesting that, but what I was suggesting is providing some guardrails, you could call it, for the community itself, with boards. Yep. So I certainly don't want to undo that local decision making, but just to see those structures in the accepted behaviours and the understanding of how important those groups are to the community. And it's not only now, that I think I made my point quite clear, is in the future, they're going to be even more important.
Right, so you weren't saying that the local communities are to have more autonomy or more control around decision making in their communities. You're just saying, let's have the right structure, making the same decisions that they're making today.
Yes, but some see what guardrails you can put up in terms of giving that process and that those boards safe enough to, accepted behaviours, you could say, that people expect. And what I would say in our Southern communities are reasonably conservative communities, and they have expectations the way things should be done.
Thank you. And then lastly from councillor Runcorn.
Thank you, Rob. This time will be a question. It's people just your feelings around the conversations that have been held around amalgamation. I'm going to ask you the feelings of the councillors around your table. Where are they sitting?
Okay, I can first of all say that I'm just 1 of 12.
I think just in terms of that question, I think we're in relation to this representation review, that's another conversation for a different type of different day. So I think we might leave that question for the next process, because we're actually talking about the current representation review here today. So I think
I could answer it if you want.
But yeah.
Reasonably positive. A wide variety of views, you could say.
Thank you. Once again, appreciate that you came along, Pete. And we've got our recommendations here, and I probably should have actually moved them first, looking at the one. So I'm just going to change the wording in that we have heard rather than that we will hear, because we've already heard from them. So A through to D, that we receive the report, representation review, submissions and hearings on the representation proposal, that we receive the submissions on the representation proposal contained in attachment B of the officer's report, and then the new C, that we note that the 2 submitters were heard and spoke to their submissions on the representation proposal, and that we note all feedback received in the submissions and hearing will be considered at council's meeting on the 23rd of October, where it will adopt its final review.
Rob?
Yeah?
Sorry, I just want to just ask, because we've heard from the submissions, I just had one question regarding the actual report. Just about the feedback from Te Ao Marama. I was wondering if in time for that consideration of this at council, if we could get just maybe request that at that council meeting, we extend an invitation to a representative from Te Ao Marama, so that we could maybe, as we've done in this submission process, see if there's any suggestions to the future of what that could look like.
Yeah, no, that's a valid request. Yeah, that could be arranged.
Actually, through your worship, Matt actually created a question around that submission as well, specific to their reasons for their feedback. 12, Southland District Council does not currently have any mana whenua representation at governance level, and opportunities for mana whenua to participate in decision making at a governance level would be welcomed and encouraged. So, yeah,
I don't know if we have any comment around that at this stage.
Well, I think it's probably a question for Chair Madam. I don't think we can speak on their behalf in this room, but to Matt's request,
that we're asking that question, again, it would be appreciated.
Yeah,
be great.
No, for sure. So someone in a position to move A through to D? Councillor Graney, seconded by Councillor Keast. There's no further discussion. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Anyone against? That's carried. Okay, so I'll take us to our final item of the day, which is item 7.3, which is a budget carry forward request from 23 to 24 financial year into 24-25 on page 109 if you're attending. And I'll welcome Susan and Avneet to the table. First time to the table, Avneet. Welcome along.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to take the opportunity to just introduce you to Avneet. He's a business partner in finance who started at the beginning of the start of this calendar year. So been around now for about 6 months. This is the first time he's been really involved in writing a report over through to you. So the purpose of this report is to seek approval from council to carry forward the projects and budgets not completed at 30 June 24. In the essence of time, I'm going to take the report as read. Just, I guess, a brief synopsis. We are proposing to carry forward 107 items with a value of 13.1 million. It compares to 133 items with a value of 12.6 million for the prior year. So that comparison is shown in paragraph 12, or in paragraph 13 shows the breakdown by activity. As has been noted in the report, the office building and 10 multi-year projects are a significant portion of this year's carry forwards. And all the detail of the items requested to be carried forward are shown on pages in appendix on pages 119 to 123.
I guess just for some context on the numbers of items, because I've looked through a lot of those and some of them are almost completed or very close to completion. So it's not a binary list of things that aren't actually complete. It's just at the time of the financial year cutoff, they weren't actually completely finished. So it's, I guess, well, I could be bold enough to say it's not as bad as it looks in terms of.
Correct.
Some of them are actually close to complete.
Now, having been around for a few years of these, this feels a lot better than previous years, both in terms of, while the absolute dollars may not have changed by taking out particularly that Invercargill building and the water and waste projects that they were always budgeting to do over multiple years. It's just where are the dollars going to land. It makes it look a whole lot better than previously. And also, as you say, a number of those projects, even where we're not seeing dollars spent at 30 June, the work has been well progressed and not far off being done for most of everything in space.
And some of them even completed, but just waiting on an invoice to come out.
Yes. Surprisingly, I think for Mr. Marshall, I'm surprised at the number of local contractors who don't always seem to want to invoice us in a hurry. There's a couple.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the floor? Councillor Byers.
The capital project in Invercargill office replacement, is there any expense being incurred at the moment?
Did you want to ask one, Sam?
Through the chairs, the expenditure included to carry out the due diligence investigation on that.
Noting that's currently public excluded, that piece too. So.
Yeah, just referring to this 5 million, is that just the due diligence?
No, the 5 million is the budget that's been in the long-term plan since 2018. So that's a carry forward budget that keeps rolling over year on year. So that was put into the 2018 long-term plan. So that's just it keeps on rolling forwards, that budget. So that's not in relation to any particular activity at the moment. Councillor Menzies.
It's just a silly question for me, but in relation to the multi-year projects and this money carried forward, because what's been allocated for that year hasn't all been spent. So what about the reverse essence?
So there is, I think somewhere in here there is one negative. Yeah, it's to do with the Tianao Airport review.
Yeah.
So if they had gone the other way, we wouldn't have done a negative carry forward. Historically, we usually had a few of those. It just so happens this year that the work they've done with the long-term plan and the timing of that means that actually we haven't, when they've done much more work around the work program, we didn't end up in a space of saying,
well, we only had 300,000, but we spent 500 and this year, we're taking 200 out next year. We actually haven't had that.
Right, so we haven't, yes, because that would normally come as a balance.
Yes, that would normally be part of this, and it just happens this year that there aren't any, as I say, apart from the airport review, which we split the budget evenly between 2 years. It's not quite how the dollars are.
Yes, I appreciate that's difficult. All right, thank you, because as I said, a number of these projects are just in their final stages, and it's just a matter of timing. Yeah, thank you.
I'll take us to our recommendations there on page 110. Sorry, Matt. Thanks, Maggie.
Oh, cool. Yeah, thanks. I just had one question about the list. So this is budget carry forward into the now operational financial year. Is there any if the budget was utilized in the previous financial year, does that necessarily mean that the project itself is through to completion? So for example, there was some investigation work that had a $20,000 carry forward into the last financial year. It's not on this list. I know the money's been allocated, but we haven't yet seen evidence of that investigation work come through. So where's the list of projects that are still to be completed, but the budgets have been allocated to the appropriate financial year, so there's no carry forward? Is that list available somewhere?
So you will have seen, I guess, the long-term plan processes feed into this. So when we were doing work in the the work that was done in October 23, and then again when we did the forecasting that came through to council in May 24, if work was identified, and the one we're talking about may very well have been one that had been carried from 22, 23 into 23, 24. If it was identified as actually we won't be completing it in 23, 24 for whatever reason, it may very well have been picked up and dropped straight into the long-term plan itself. So you will have seen in the day of the LTP adoption, there was a list of projects that was part of that document. So it should have been included on that. But if you've got a very specific project that you're looking to track, if you could send an email through.
Yeah, well, I think it originally dated back to 2015. So, but it was still it was allocated in the 23-24 financial plan. But I'll email yourself and water services to figure that out. Thanks.
Thank you, Matt. Councillor Byers.
Thank you, Your Worship. When will we get the final figures for the Taramia Bay toilets? There's quite a bit of interest around the cost of housing for toilets. Wondering if we could get those final figures through as soon as possible.
I couldn't comment on whether there's anything in process, but we can certainly track that in lots of detail.
Oh, that'd be good. Thanks. Thank you.
Cool. So I'll take us to our recommendations here that A through to C are our standard ones, and D that we approve the income and expenditure below to be carried forward into the 24-25 financial year to be funded from the sources as detailed in attachment A of the officer's report. And there isn't an E looking over the page. So Fiona's suggesting I read out each line individually, and I'm suggesting that's probably not required because it's not raining at the moment and we've got to go have a look at Colac Bay. Are you happy to move that, Councillor Byers?
No, just one more quick question.
One more quick question.
Moving these in next year doesn't guarantee that these funds will be spent, does it? It's just
Right, so through. Yeah, it's moving the budget. So there are some items in here that might continue as they're already under contract and in process. There are other items in here, which I suspect there may be one that's of particular interest to you, that there will still be a process that would go through before the money started. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Cool.
Someone in a position to move? Were you happy to move that, Councillor Byers? Seconded by Councillor Menzies. There's no further discussion. I'll put motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Anyone against? That is carried. Thank you. And that concludes the meeting. So I'll do the closing karakia. Kia hora te marino, kia whakapapa, ko namu te moana, hei hurahi, ma tātou I te rangi nei, aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou I a tātou katoa, huye toi. May the peace be widespread, may the sea be like greenstone, a pathway for us all this day that'll show respect for each other, for one another, bind us all together. Thank you. Let's go to Colac Bay. Sorry? We're
There's a thing on the schedule that you can take you to, pop back here for a cup of tea.
Okay, so we
And
can
then,
leave there.
yep.
Right,
But I'm gonna slightly tidy things up as, Rob.
Yeah.
Fiona, can I help if we?
No, they get to